Hey, I'm Jenna. Welcome to This Ohio Farmhouse. Today we're going to be talking about something that isn't something people really enjoy talking about. What do we do about inflation and how are we going to kind of come up against this and prepare for it? Because at this point it's pretty inevitable that it's coming our way. The gas prices are going through the roof. Every time that you go to the grocery store, the prices are rising. So what does this look like for your family? I'm going to walk you around our property real quickly today and just kind of give you a little glimpse of some of the things that we're doing to combat inflation and maybe give you some ideas of what you could be doing even if you don't necessarily live on a homestead.
We know what we have, let's hold on tight. Found what we're looking for in life. Call us crazy, but things are finally right. With you and I, the future is bright.
If you've watched our channel for any amount of time, you know that one of the things I'm going to tell you to do is to go start a garden. But before we get to that point, I want to encourage you to just start saving up food in general. If you don't have a garden started, you can still go to the grocery store, pick up things that are on sale, buy them in bulk. One of the things that saves us quite a bit of money is that we found this little Mennonite-owned grocery store that's like a discount store. It's about 45 minutes from our house, but we take a drive over there about once a month and we load up in a big way. They have a huge selection, typically when we go, of organic items, and so we're able to pick up a lot of like cereals and granola bars, snacks. They have cheeses and meats and all kinds of things, but they're at a much discounted rate, and so we'll go over there, and it's not unusual for us to spend $300 or $400, but if we were to buy those same things in a normal local grocery store, we would be looking more at like $700 or $800 easily for the price savings that we're getting by going over there. If you can't find a discount grocery store in your area, at least familiarize yourself with your store specials. My husband has kind of become a master of knowing when they're putting out manager specials at Kroger and where to look for those, how to come home with some really great deals. It's not unusual for him to come home with 20 loaves of bread or tons and tons of yogurt, whatever it is that's on sale, and then we just freeze it, store it away. All right, you all knew that I was going to talk to you about gardening because it's become something that I'm really passionate about. When I started gardening, I did not have a green thumb at all. I actually killed pretty much everything that I touched, and my husband, Ben, was the one who really did the better job of caring for things and was more meticulous and knew how to look for certain diseases and pests, and I feel like I was distracted and ruined a lot of things. So over the years, I have dived into this and really tried to get a handle on gardening. It became something that I'm not only really passionate about, but it becomes kind of my therapy. It's become my place where I can just go and be out in nature and get some work done. It becomes my place where I'm exercising, where I'm praying, where I'm thinking. And so the garden is something that I'm becoming really passionate about. Now, if it was just for enjoyment, I probably wouldn't be on this big mission to create huge garden spaces. We're doing even more gardens than ever because we're preparing for inflation. That means that we are not only growing food for ourselves, but we're starting to grow food for our animals. So this garden that you see behind me is all new space that we've put in this year, trying to combat inflation. We have our gardens in the front and an orchard, and that's been where I've primarily grown most of my food. But in order to get a lot more growing done this year, we had to put in a new huge bed, and so I'm still working on this and getting all of this into place. Growing your own food can save your family thousands of dollars because it produces a lot. So I would encourage you that if you're thinking about starting a garden, even if it's on a small scale, think through the things that will produce a lot of food for your family. Growing one watermelon that takes up a big amount of space is probably not the best use of your space if you could grow something like a bush bean or pole beans that are going to create a lot of yield for your family, or something like tomatoes where you can put them away for the winter. Also be thinking about how you're going to store them when you choose what you're going to put in your garden. because you need to have a plan for storing them long term if you're going to have more than what you can eat. So if you don't know how to can, or you're not ready to learn that, you may need to make sure that you get yourself a dehydrator or borrow one from a friend, or that you put lots of things in the freezer. So just think ahead of what your long-term storage solutions are going to be. I'm going to be putting out more canning videos as the season progresses here, but there's lots of things available on YouTube to show you really just how simple canning is, so don't be intimidated by storing your food that way. Now, I recognize that everybody can't just throw some steers or some pigs onto their property. That's just not realistic. But that being said, you can always look for people who are and purchase either a whole or a half of a steer or a pig to put into your freezer. I also recommend that even if you're having a hard time finding somebody locally that advertises, that you know that they sell lots and lots, I know that it's getting harder and harder to come by because more people are buying their meat this way because of the rising costs in the grocery store. So it's putting more of a burden on the farmers that are doing this, and they're trying to do their best to keep up with the demand. But if you can even just ask around to people that you know that are smaller farmers. Us, for instance, we have more than what we necessarily need, but we, instead of getting just one pig to feed out, we got two so that those pigs could be raised together. So when it comes time to butcher them, we're selling that extra pig off to some friends, and then we're going to butcher the other one for our own consumption and use. And so you may want to just ask around if anybody has an extra that they're going to be butchering or processing that you could purchase from them. Now, the same thing proves to be true about baby chicks. Most people that I know that are raising birds end up with far more than what they really need. And so oftentimes they will be willing to sell those birds off, and you can pay to have them processed. We need anywhere from like 60 to 75 birds for a year for our family. That allows me to cook a chicken each week because we also have pork and beef available to us that we're raising. So I'm cooking about 1 to 2 chickens each week for our family. When you're putting meat into the freezer, something to consider is that the electricity could go off for any number of reasons. You could have a snowstorm, windstorm, whatever it is, the grid could be down, and you don't want all of that meat to be ruined. And so learning how to can meat is a really beneficial skill to have. So that's just something else to consider when you're storing up food for your family. One of the small things that we're doing here at the farmhouse is making our own household cleaners. We have a couple of videos out where we're making different types of cleaners that we use around the house. We can make those really inexpensively by keeping a few items on hand. I almost always have vinegar. I have a wall full of essential oils, and their cleaning power is amazing. So any little thing that we can do like that to save a little bit of money, we're doing. It really doesn't take any more effort for me to mix up another bottle of something as it does to grab more of it in the grocery store. It's a matter of a couple of minutes of my time, not that big of a deal. Something else to consider if you don't want to even have to rely on having those few items on hand, there are companies like Norwex or eCloth that I have purchased in the past. I have a little collection of them, and those only require water in order to clean. And it does a really efficient job of doing so. So there is actually silver that is woven into the fabrics, and it is antibacterial, antimicrobial, and so you can actually, without having to have any cleaners at all, get your house in order. I'm a big fan of these rags. If you take care of them well, they will last you years and years, and so it's definitely a good investment. It keeps you from having to continually buy cleaners. Norwex is a company that you need to find a representative that sells that, but I have several in my area that I could choose from. I am not one of them, but there are lots of people around that sell Norwex. eCloth is something that you can pick up. We can buy it at our local furniture store, and I have gotten those as well, and I feel like they work just as well as the Norwex, and they have that same silver technology woven into the fibers. So something to consider. It's a little bit of upfront cost, but definitely over time saves you quite a lot of money, and you can clean your house without having to buy conventional cleaners. So not only is it healthier, but it's going to save you quite a bit of money. So one of the things that we're doing on our property to try to deal with the rising gas prices that we're seeing all around us is that we went ahead and filled up this fuel tank on our property. You have a couple of options when you do this. You can choose either on-road or off-road fuel, and the off-road is dyed a red color so that if you were to be caught on the road driving with this, there's going to be fines and complications that come your way because of that. That on-road fuel is taxed, and so you definitely have to specify when you're having your fuel tanks filled up whether you need off-road or on-road fuel. The off-road is meant for your farm equipment and the things that you're using to manage land, not for driving on the road. So those are two completely different things. So this allowed us to lock in the current prices of the fuel. Not that they're the greatest, but it's definitely better than the $9 or $10 a gallon that the experts are predicting. So this gives us a little bit of assurance in knowing that if things really did get bad and we have pumps that are empty, that we have a little reserve on our own property that will help us in the case that something dramatic happens. Talking about inflation and worrying about your family is not the most pleasant of conversations, but in this day, I feel like it is completely necessary to face this head on. Now, there's a balance between being smart and preparing and worrying and being fearful that you're not going to be able to be providing for your family. So I just want to encourage you that God says that He takes care of the birds in the air and the flowers in the fields, and how much more does He love and care for His own people. So just rest in knowing that we need to be smart and taking some actions to prepare, but not doing so in a way that we are worried or fearful, and just trusting that God has us and He's going to take care of all of our needs. So thank you for being here, and I'll see you next week on This Ohio Farmhouse.